Legends, basically final trades week. I think most likely it's the best time to use them, unless you're sitting there with 20 green dots and very happy with your 17. I imagine most of us are somewhere around that 15 to 18 green dots, and your 17 that you're playing you might not be super happy with. And we've got a little bit of a worry around Maxi Plath, the goat, with his calf injury as well. So probably is likely the time to make trades, whether it's head-to-head finals, whether it's just getting ahead of the weeks, obviously, and trying to get that 20 extra points or so this week, and then potentially getting it next week as well, and just seeing what happens in terms of restings. And there are a couple of things that can play out, and a couple of team wins or losses, which could change how next week looks in terms of resting. But for the most part, I think most teams will play as is. There's really no point for resting any of the guys clearly in the bottom eight. There'll be teams pushing for the top eight. There'll be teams pushing for the top four or a home final. So I think most teams, except for there's an example where if Manly were to lose this week, which could definitely happen against the Dogs there, that they won't be able to get a home final, so they might rest players next week. So there's an interesting example, which we just didn't expect to be happening, given the situation that they were in last week playing up against the Tigers. But let's get into the guys that we're potentially going to be looking at buying with our last trades. But before we do that, the holds and potentially the sells. And if you're looking at the who's not list, we've got Cleary, obviously. You got Hughes and Galvin. I think that, and Grant, obviously, I think they're all close to the holds if you possibly can. If you need to use their cash to trade up to someone at a higher price point, I completely understand. But then you probably are going to be looking at wanting their scores next week. So that's where I'm personally looking at it. I'm probably going to want one of their scores next week. I've got both Hughes and Galvin. I'm probably going to try and hold them and sell Blore instead. Obviously, I don't get as much value out of the Blore sale, but it might be him, or it could be Casey McLean in your case. It could be Kaipis Paul, Roger Tuivasa-Sheck, all these types of players. Samuel Afenu, who are less likely to go really, really big, obviously, there next week. Guys like Eli Katoa, you expect them to come back and have a pretty good game next week. People are selling Josh Curran this week, and I think, when Max King was in the team, remember Curran was a bench guy anyway, so I don't think that matters too much either. Ethan Strange, just continue to sell him, is completely fine. Cam Murray, unfortunately, didn't get off on his charge, so sell him. Guys like Api Coruscant or Stefano could easily be sold. They're not the top tier guys like the Hughes and the Galvin. Obviously, Api's a little bit under a 50 average for the season, although he can, potentially go nuts in that last game as well up against the Eels. So they're kind of the thoughts that I wanted to throw out there around the holds and the sells. And then we'll get into some of the buys. In the hooking position, it is little and it's little only. That's all you should be looking at in that spot. Price is 53, averaging 51.5, and continuing to kill it in his old age. And when I say his old age, into the end of the season, he's really peaking well and had a great couple of months, and exactly what we thought he would do when we got the 80 minutes. It just took him a little bit to get there, and he continues to do that. So little, the good buy of this week. Carrigan at 747. If you have that cash available, he's an awesome pick. Obviously picked up a 73 last week there for his second best score of the season, which was lovely. Exactly what you wanted, coming off two back-to-back 66 since your boy Payne Haas has been out. But he's obviously been named on the reserves, and they'll try and get him in and play if possible. But I do think, obviously, he's not going to play the humongous minutes. He probably gets the 50 if he plays, but we know he takes the ball away a little bit from Carrigan in the carries section. But hopefully Carrigan gets in and makes plenty of tackles and still plays the 80. So a small little worry on him for playing 80 minutes and getting his massive scores, but I still think at a pricing of 53, you should get close to a 60 out of him, even if Haas isn't there. And if he's not there, then hopefully a big mid-60 score again. Isaiah Yeo, very unlikely he rests now. So if you have upwards of 851 available, get him in your side. He's still the best option. Does come up against the Bunnies. I do think an easy way to get him a rest is if they're really far up in this game, they might be able to take him off and give Liam Henry and these types of guys more minutes on that bench. So that's the only kind of worry over the last two games, but they do need to get some wins on the board. That's for sure. Adam Fanua-Blake, if you're just looking at a head-to-head finals perspective and you have under 800k, he's the guy that you want at the moment. He's been scoring incredibly well, playing massive minutes. It will be his last game for the Wars, and we've seen there the mid-60s, high 60s minutes have been netting him 3 incredible scores. Tackle numbers have been up, running really well. getting his offloads, getting his tackle breaks without tries in the last 3 weeks there, which has been awesome. He does have a 39 in his game, as seen by 3 scores in the 6 games prior. But if you're looking for a win, if you're looking for a big score, Adam Fanua-Blake can produce. Tarpany, obviously in the same boat, a little bit more volatile at this present stage, but the last 4 or 5 weeks has been really good. He had a couple of 40s in there before that. He had some 50s, a 76, and he picked up a 67 last game in minutes that we would have expected from him in the weeks prior to that. He had sin bins and he got an early mark when they were absolutely getting smashed. So if they're getting smashed again this week, that could be the worry against the Roosters, but I do think that he can score well across the 2 weeks. Very, very unlikely he would be rested across those 2. And Ruben Cotter, if you needed a cut price type of option, we're obviously looking at him coming off a 17 into a bye, but he was scoring really, really well before that. 55, did have a head knock game, but in games where he was actually playing big minutes and doing well, 65, 76, 64, and 55. So if you don't have the cash available at 635k, he could come out and do a really good job considering they need to get wins in these last couple to try and push into a home final, which they are currently sitting in. But if they take a loss, I think they'll lose that home final chance, which they don't want. Angus Crichton at 695. If you need an edge, if you need anyone around that price, he's the guy that can do it for you against Canberra and against Rabbitohs. He has ability and a chance to score tries in those games. Finally got the spoils after a slow 3 weeks there. But in and around those 3 weeks, he's gone 73, 64, and 75. And he has the ability to break open games for you and get good wins there for sure. One I wanted to touch on, which we'll add after Britton Nickra, is going to be Wishart as well, as a bit of a grand final play, which is something I've actually looked at that price point, given I'm trying to sell Shawnee Bloor. But Britton Nickra at 709, been really, really good, obviously, the last bunch of weeks as well. 56 into 64 into 69, and that's the kind of stretch that he went on after those 30s in the first place. So it looks like if he keeps going on that stretch, he has another couple of 60s in his game. His try scoring ability has been awesome in the last 3 weeks, especially in the last few months, has been spectacular. And I think he can do it again against the Warriors. He's running incredible lines and he's such a good player, Britt Nickra. Let's go to Wishart now at 522k. He's playing 9 this week, and we know that he's split a little bit of time there across the season when we had a Harry Grant go off, when we had, who was it? Who's the replacement? I keep going to say Brandon. Garlic, Bronson, another B name. He went off and Wishart moved to 9, and he actually scored a try from there and did really well from the 6th position and moved in there and tackled his heart out and did great work. And we've seen the tackle numbers up really high, and we know in the middle there he'll be able to still run the footy well, make even more tackles, and hopefully be involved in the attack in a team where they're going to really need him to step up. So as a 1 week play at 522k, I think he can do really, really well for you. Moving on to Dylan Lucas, 630. If you're wanting an edge, a little bit cheaper, or a centre there at 630, playing in the back row this week, we know that he can do good things in that position. So let's just look to him in the second row. Across his career now, it's a 52.5, and in 2024, it is a 52.3. So he's super consistent. It's just which week you're going to grab him. Are you going to grab him on the 60 week or the 70 week or the mid 30s to 40? But that is what you're getting out of a centre and an edge on a regular basis. So a really good opportunity against the Titans and potentially the Dolphins if he keeps that starting spot. But that's the only worry, is if Kai Pierce-Paul and Frizzell come back for next week, he might be in the centres or on the bench. But for more, if you have that extra bit of Bicky, then going to him is going to be the play. He played the 80 minutes last week and got the 52, so he got through that nicely. He did miss 5 tackles, which is actually his highest of the year, apart from round 3, where he also got 5, and he had 3 penalties. Actually, that was a few weeks ago. Scratch that, he had 1 penalty last week there. So he definitely has room for improvement to still get 52 in a week where he had 5 missed tackles, a penalty, and an error. I think that his second game back after a few weeks off, he'll be able to go really well against the Knights there. Without obviously Kai Pierce-Paul there, they're putting Brodie Jones on that side, so I think he can score well at 722k. It will be good. Liam Martin, it's a bit of a fun one. You got Martin and Jerome Luai very, very cheap this week. They can all do a job for you. And at 519, we've seen in the recent history that he has some high scores in amongst some lower ones. So 60 with a try, 54 against the Knights, 29 into a 52. And they really need to win. So I think he can come out and put on a bit of a performance. He is a guy that is going to be a little bit up and down, and it's a bit of a punt. But if you've got someone around the 450 to 20 mark that you need to sell, then Martin could definitely do a job for you and help you win a matchup. It could also help you lose the matchup as well, or get you a 30, which is we're accustomed to see from people at that price. Moving on to the halves, and Burton at 764 is a really good candidate this week for one of your buys of the week. I think close to the best. His form in recent history has been great. 51's his lowest in the last 4. 71 and a 76 without a try in the last 2 has been great. I think there's still be some points in this Manly game, so he should be able to get involved. His defense has been really, really strong, making pretty well 20 plus tackles a week for most of his last 7 games there, going under that twice. And his kick meters and run meters have been spectacular. So Burton, I'm expecting him to hit somewhere between that 55 to 60 average over the last 2 games, and he should play those last 2 games, unless I think the Cowboys lose, and that'll lock the Dogs to win. I think it locks them in 5th, but they're also a chance of getting into 4th as well. So unlikely he would be to rest, especially if they have a chance at 4th. But Adam Reynolds, the 612k, is a very interesting pick, that's for sure. He absolutely went nuts last week, and we've seen back-to-back weeks where he's gone well, 68 and 81 for him, and really trying to help this Broncos team get into the finals. And before that, he was a bit slow, 34, 25, and 43. He could definitely go back to that, but we know when he is in rhythm that he is a 50s guy. And a lot of time he is a buy until he gets injured, and he gets injured a lot. So 612k priced at 44. You're getting a lot of value from someone that has the potential to go 68 or 81 in any given week with kicking goals, and just his base stats alone, 709 kick meters last week, which is massive. So Reynolds, a really fun one at 612. Fogarty, and they're playing for their season, obviously. Jamal Fogarty is 656. He's going to be a bit more consistent than that of Reynolds, but he is up against the Roosters this week. And I think after a good win, they might struggle a little bit to come out and win this one. But 54 last week was great, but the 3 weeks before he was under 50. So I think I'd probably go for Reynolds more than Fogarty. He has a little bit more upside as well on that one. Munster of 526 is a very interesting play. My only thought here with guys like Wishart, Munster, Pappenhausen is that because they aren't resting this week, they're going to leave them on the park and they've missed a lot of games. They may miss the game before the finals. So they may miss next week. So if you were looking at Munster, obviously taking over this game, he hasn't scored very well in the previous 3 games for sure, 34, 37, and 35. He should do well this week against the Cows, given he's going to be the main guy with Grant Edison likely at 7. I think he can be really good for your head-to-head grand final at that price. But over a 2-week period, I'm not sure if he's going to play both games given the injuries he has sustained in recent history. That's the punt you might have to take. But for a head-to-head play only, I think he has some nice upside. Jake Clifford at 482. He's priced at 34, and that doesn't really matter from here on in. What we're looking at is at 84 last game. And the 2 games that he's played this year at halfback, being the dominant kicker, or for the most part dominant kicker, he's got a 43 and an 84, but that 15 against the Panthers is a bit worrying, and they actually won that game, the Cows. He got a 15 and then got 24 in a win as well against the Roosters earlier on in the year. So this is definitely the boom or bust play, but if he plays anything like he did against the Raiders, I think a 50 is on the cards here for Clifford. And we do see across the years when he does play in the halfback position, he can have some up and down games. There's a bunch of 60s and high 50s. There's an 83 in there in 2020, but for the most part, it's like 40s. So it does feel like a punt, that's for sure. Sammy Walker, 639. Very high chance he plays the last 2 games, and they do come up against Raiders and the Rabbitohs. And we know that when he's kicking a lot of goals and he's involved in everything, he can do great things. Last 2 weeks have been 39 and 46. So you're taking a bit of a risk, but I definitely think he can go 50 plus over these last 2 weeks. But again, you played Eels and Titans, who weren't the greatest teams that they've played against this year. They've scored a lot of points, and he hasn't been involved really in anything. He's had 1 try and 1 try assist, but really that's not going to be enough for him, isn't it? He needs a lot more attacking stats. So definitely a risk. Nico Hines, if he actually gets called in and plays this game at 807, he's obviously a guy that can be a game breaker for you in the head-to-head finals. So very, very interesting, that one. Does he kind of ease back? Does he go 50s? He wasn't looking his best before the injury. Hopefully he can look great following the injury there. So we'll see how that plays out. He's had a lot of weeks off, 7 or 8 weeks, and hopefully he comes back well. And if you don't pick him, hopefully he's just looking good for the finals there when they get a chance. So Jerome Luai, he's one of the guys I'm actually interested in this week, which is pretty funny how that one works out. But he has a 48 average at halfback across his career. And obviously you have to look at without Cleary, like we spoke about last week. But it didn't work last week. They played terribly. 48.5 is what his average is at halfback without Cleary. And you do see here some really big games in there. A 98 with a double and 95 with that single try assist, couple of line breaks, massive kick meters as well. And that's what you need to be looking at, obviously, with Cleary in that one. The other one to look at is with Schneider, who he's going to be paired with here. So he actually has 3 scores there, a 66 this year, a 52, and then the 27 against the Raiders. So let's chalk the Raiders game to a bit of a shocker. And I think we look back at all the other ones. And if you can get a 48 average out of someone priced at 42, who has some tremendous upside with a team in a team that really needs some wins, I'm considering it, going from Blore to Luai, that's for sure. That's me looking with, trying to get a little bit of upside out of him, out of my team here. With I need a bit of a push to try and get back into the top 500 or 450, 400, whatever I want to get to. And I think Blore to Luai, could have that upside. And Blore's scoring 30s anyway, so Luai could go back-to-back 50s and really helps me over the last few weeks there. The other option I'm looking at is like Watson to Ponga. But I feel like Watson has big scores in him, right? We've seen it all year. And that feels weird to trade an absolute gun, even though he's had a tough month, that's for sure. Lomax, 668 in the centres now we are. I think that he has a good chance to go big in the last 2 weeks against Para and Canberra. So someone who has upside. He has been scoring really well in recent history. Picked up a 44 with no try on the weekend, but 2 60s before that. Lomax, dual position, should play the last 2 games, is a really good option. Dan Gagai at 700k. You obviously have Bradman Best as well. I haven't spoken about him, but first game after injury, feels like that's a bit of a tough one to select Bradman, but I hope that he helps Greg Marzou anyway. But 700k for Dane. If you want someone that has upside, you saw it last week with the 89. You saw it in round 18 with an 80 as well. He's most likely going to score a 40. And if he doesn't, he could go big with a try there. Like he got a try the week before for 55. He got a double for 89 there against the Bunnies. And he come up against the Titans and the Dolphins. And that last game against Herbie Farnworth is going to be fun to watch. He should play both and is a really fun center roulette type of player that doesn't even have that low upside because he's such a good runner of the footy, right? Val Holmes, with an easier game against Melbourne, you could go for him this week as a bit of an upside play in that first game of the week, and then has the Dogs to finish. But as a head-to-head finals play, Val, we know, can have big games. He's picked up a 75 and a 68 in 2 of his last 3 games, an 80 in round 12 against the Tigers, and 88 earlier on in the year. So he has those upside games and could definitely do a job for you in the centres this week against the Storm, who are depleted of their stars. Selwyn Cobbo, would definitely be a fun one. He's got a lot of 40s, picked up a 17 on the wing in round 21, and he's got a 52 there as well against the Eels. And if he can get anywhere near that, I think he's going to be worth it, obviously, at 537 against the Dolphins into the Storm to finish off the year. Could be a play, just a bit of a fun one that people are looking at buying. And then Herbie Farnworth, the offload king currently, he's not going a game without 4 or 5 offloads in the last 3 weeks. And he has obviously that boom upside. He has 2 90s this year, and then a 49, a 51, basically all around that. So consistency is his game right now, and is definitely someone that you could look at this week. Carraz, a 697. Both these guys are pretty expensive, but they both have that upside. And I'm not sure how much upside he has this week in the centres, Carraz. Going to be a fairly tough matchup, especially with Manly really needing to win after losing last week. And the Dogs really firmly placed in that position there in the 5th spot. But last time he did play centre, he picked up a 72. So he could definitely do that. And then 63 before that against the Roosters. So definitely not knocking his ability at centre. Now the Dogs have been playing well, and Sexton is able to give him plenty of ball. Ponga, I think, is pretty close to the best buy of the week, to be honest, at 652k against the Titans this week. We know it could be a very leaky game of footy. He was on like 4 in 30 minutes last week and then exploded with plenty of opportunities to score across running the footy and passing, and scored a 72. So it's been a while since he's done that, all the way back through to round 4, and he looked much better in that second half. It looked like every time he touched the footy, he was going to get involved, and that was against the Bunnies, and he has the Titans and Dolphins, which can be very leaky as well. So a guy that could make or break the rest of your season. He's owned by 50% of people, and one that I don't currently have, and I wish I did. Turbo's the next one at 783, obviously 130k more expensive, but with him, he's just moved into incredible form. As I said, there's a little bit of a risk next week as if they lose, but with how he's playing, he's just scoring tries at will and should be able to score well again if they can have a good game against the Dogs. But the Dogs have incredible defense, and does he get slowed down against the Dogs and also the Cronulla Sharks? Because in that game against the Roosters in round 21, who was a good defense, obviously there was a lot of points there, but they were able to nullify Tom, and the points came in other ways. But yeah, been a lot of points and less defense in these games in recent history with Manly, and he could continue to score well and be one of the best options this week. But Pap there at 513k could be one of the upside plays of the week. If Storm happen to play fairly well, he will be involved in everything, but there's obviously some worries around his scores. The 3 games before last week's 53. But he had the 65, and he's had a 7 in there off the interchange. How'd that one work? No, it's 2023. Scratch that. I was right. The 53. He had 31, 43, and 7 before a 63, a 28, 60, a 33. It's just all over the shop. So you could definitely make or break your week as well. We haven't seen that tremendous upside in recent history that someone like Tedesco has. And if they've got 2 nice matchups, they need to win those matchups. He could score well in the 60s like he has, or 90, or 70, high 60s, all that type of stuff that Tedesco can do. So that's the buy, hold, and sell for the week. You've got the yafss.com that has all the trade stats for the top guys, and 559 people don't have a trade left. I hope that they are set up enough that they can field a 17, because it absolutely sucks if you aren't in that position. There's 268, including myself. I'm one of them. So basically, more than 3/4 of people have 1 or less trades. And if you're in the 2, 3, or 4 bucket, at least use a couple this week. And then if you're saving yourself a couple for round 17, you should have a really nice go of it. Captains this week will work out. I'm discussing with the private group at the moment. And just remember, guys, if you've gotten to this stage, make sure you stick around for the NRL Finals fantasy series that it's going to be out there. It's going to be free. Just make sure you check in at the back end of next round, and I'll discuss how that one's going to play out. So good luck to you guys this week, and we'll see you in the video with Scoop and some of our legends that are going to come on there from the private group as well. See you guys.